I've mentioned dynamic input in other parts of this course, so let's have a look now actually at what dynamic input is. It's down here on the status bar at the bottom of the screen. It's this little icon here, dynamic input. And when I click on it, it's off. When I click on it again, it's on. Now, dynamic input itself gives you prompts next to the crosshairs in the drawing area. So if I went to the line command, for example, here on the draw panel and clicked on line, I'm prompted for the first point of my line. Now, if dynamic input was off, and I can switch it off and on mid-command, like so, if I click on it now and switch it off, there's no prompt there anymore on the crosshair. It's only in the command window down here. If I put dynamic input back on again, the prompt comes back on the screen. So how do you control these prompts and the settings of these prompts on the dynamic input? Well, let's hit escape a couple of times to cancel the line command. Go down to dynamic input on the status bar and right click over it, and you'll see there's the option there for settings on the shortcut menu. Click on settings and it will give you now the drafting settings dialog box. Now you'll notice there's all different settings here for drafting settings. You've got things like snap and grid, polar tracking, object snap, 3D object snap, and also dynamic input. And if I toggle on the arrows there, you've also got quick properties and also selection cycling as well. We'll look at those later on. Let's have a look at dynamic input. Now, dynamic input, I normally leave all of the settings as the default settings. So I enable pointer input. Self-explanatory, the input next to the pointer. Enable dimension input where possible. That's when you're drawing a line, for example. You click on the first point of your line and then it will show you the distance and the angle. So always have that switched on as well. Now you've got settings here for the types of coordinates and the format of the coordinates as well. You've also got settings here showing the 2-dimension input fields at a time. So that's going to be, for example, distance and angle. I'll just cancel those for the moment. Now, dynamic prompts, as you can see, specify first point when you're working with your line command. Show command prompting and command input near the crosshairs. Again, I normally leave that switched on. And the drafting tooltip appearance, well, that's what colours you want and the size that you want. And again, I just tend to use the default settings. I do not change it. Transparency, you can make them more transparent or less transparent. I have that set to 0 so they actually block over any other objects while I'm drafting. Because if it is transparent, you can sometimes mistake, let's say, a dimension for an actual value in one of the tooltip appearances there. So I'm going to cancel that as well, and I'm going to OK that. So all my settings are set for my dynamic input there. So to give you an example, when I click on the line command again and come here, let's just pick a point there and draw a line. There's that dimensioning. Can you see that? There's the distance and the angle. Those are those 2-dimensioning fields that I mentioned in the dynamic input. Now, dynamic input is extremely useful. It's part of what Autodesk call heads-up design. And as you can see, you're looking up at your drawing, your design, rather than looking down at the command line for what you should be inputting to draw that line. So it's heads-up design, dynamic input. Always try and use it. Always try and switch it on. It's extremely useful, and as you can see, it gives you that view on your design rather than looking down at the command line all the time.